Hey, awesome agents, it's Brandon here from Property Agent, and in this video, I'm going to be talking to you about unreasonable expectations. So, one of the questions that I frequently get asked throughout my consultations, I've taken over 800 consultations with real estate agents and agency owners over the last 2 years, and the frequently asked question is, Brandon, how do I deal with unrealistic or unreasonable clients in terms of their expectations and what they expect of me within the transaction? And the first thing that I always do is I look at their process. So, jumping straight into things here. Now, when we're talking about unreasonable expectations or unreasonable clients, this is the reality of the situation, and it could potentially be triggering for some or a little bit controversial. But the majority of the time, when it comes to clients with unreasonable expectations, 9 times out of 10, it's the agent's fault for the unreasonable expectations, not an unreasonable person. Most people that we work with, that we talk to, that we engage with as customers and clients are not unreasonable people. People don't want to be difficult and people don't want to be unreasonable. They're just simply led to believe a particular thing, or they are, when they're receiving information, they're taking the information in a way that they believe a particular thing to be true. And then what happens is when that's proven not to be true, it becomes a unreasonable expectation. And what I've found throughout all of these interactions and through my own experience in my own businesses and my agents and consultations as well is that when you look at the process as a whole between the moment in which you've engaged the client, it could be a cold outreach or an opportunity that's come in through social media ads or flyers, it doesn't matter what it is, but from the moment of that initial interaction all the way through to the settlement date, handover of keys, transactions done, dusted, it's final and it's finished, the majority of the issues that arise in the middle portion to the latter portion, the end of the sale as a whole, the selling process, most of those issues come about through a lack of expectations that were set clearly on the agent's end, on the front end. So typically in that initial interaction to the second to the third interaction. And what I find and what I've seen within all of the businesses and what I've seen within the consistencies, well, I should say the consistencies that I've seen within the businesses is that most agents believe that they're excellent communicators and that the way that they're communicating information is being received in the same way by the owner, client, customer that they're explaining it. So they have in their mind an understanding of what it is that they're explaining and they've got clarity. But what happens is it's lost in translation. And when it's received by the other prospect, the client, the customer, they're interpreting that information in a different way. And what I found is that most agents don't clarify and verify. And I'll come back to that in a moment. So continuing on this trend here with just the expectation setting is it could be via text, it could be via call, it could be via email. We all know, everybody has got stories when it comes to this, but in life, we all know somebody that we've explained something to once. We've had just a typical conversation. That person has said or taken what we've said completely the wrong way that we'd intended. And then all of a sudden you've had a really unusual interaction and you've gone, what the heck happened there? Most people have had that experience in their life. And most people have that experience in real estate as well. But when it happens in real estate and it happens in business outside of personal life, we attribute it to them being difficult and unreasonable, when in fact, 9 times out of 10, they're not difficult and they're not unreasonable people. They've just got a perception in their mind as to what they had expected. They've got an expectation in their mind which isn't being met. And so then it becomes an unreasonable expectation because we thought that we had explained it in a way that it was clear to us and then clear to them at the very beginning, but it wasn't understood and wasn't received that way. And so one of the easiest things that you can do in your business, and again, 1 out of 10, there are difficult people out there and there are unreasonable people out there. What I'm saying here is that the majority of people that you meet are not unreasonable. The majority of people that you work with, that you engage with, are not unreasonable, but certainly a few can be and are and will be, but the majority are not. And so these interactions that you're potentially having and these interactions that others have had with people that have been perceived as unreasonable clients or have unreasonable expectations, that can be resolved at the very beginning of your relationship. And what I mean by this is that as a result of your appraisal process, whenever typically we focus on appraisals or listing presentation, because that's the first value that we provide as an agent, is giving them insights into what the property's worth, then how to improve the property, how to market the property, how to sell the property, and so on. Is in that appraisal process, you can ask a number of questions to gain total clarity on the circumstances that the client is in. What you want to be doing, and I highly recommend taking a pen and paper and writing these down and applying these into your business, is all clients have fears, frustrations, pain points, problems, and all clients have an ideal outcome. Now, what happens is most agents are not 100% clear when they're engaging with a client as to what those pain points, problems, frustrations, or anxieties are, or total clarity around what the outcome is. Now, if you have total clarity on the pain points, problems, and you have total clarity on the outcome, you are able to then understand the headspace that the client is in. You're able to understand what they're experiencing, what they're thinking, their likely train of thought, which means not only can you, one, communicate more effectively with them, two, be understood, and they feel as though they're understood, and people like people that are like them and understand them, so an additional added benefit of this process, but three, you're able to make sure that when you're communicating with somebody, you're always framing expectations, whether it's price, whether it's marketing, whether it's commission, whether it's improvements to the property, in a way that it's going to be understood and received well, because you've got total clarity around the pain point, problems, frustrations, and also the outcome that they're wanting. Because if you tie things into the outcome that they want, they're going to receive that information more openly, and they're going to have clarity and understanding as to why you're suggesting the things that you're suggesting, because it ties back into the outcome that they're trying to achieve. Now, coming back to the clarification and the verification, is whenever you're trying to convey something that you know is typically an issue, because it's not that you have multiple clients and they have unreasonable expectations in a myriad of different areas within the transaction. It's typically centered around commission, price, marketing, improvements to the property, things that people will like and things that they'll dislike. And so because we know what those areas of objection are in the future, we can speak to them very, very clearly at the beginning. And so there's a couple of things that you can do here. And the first thing that I recommend that you do is whenever you're conveying information that relates to a topic that typically is an area of objection in the future, or an area where there's an unreasonable expectation, is that you are ensuring that you are clarifying and you are verifying. So when you're conveying information, just like you would if you're talking to somebody that's learning something for the first time, if you're a teacher, is that you ask them what their interpretation was of what you've said. And once they've said what you had said and it's correct, then you're verifying it again and you're speaking to it again. So if you're saying based on the recent sales and the location, based on your CMA, that the property is worth $1 million, what you're asking them once you've finished and you're moving on from the appraised price is you're clarifying what their perception of value is. And you're asking them, now that you've got all the evidence, now you've got everything that you need, all the information that you need to make an informed decision, what do you think the property is worth? And based on my feedback, well, we think it's worth $1 million. Fantastic. So I'm clarifying. Well, you're not speaking to that, but you're clarifying. And then what you're saying to them, I'm just verifying that we're on the same page. So you're saying that based on the evidence that I've supplied, is that you see value at $1 million. Yes, great. Okay, you've locked them in. You've clarified, you've verified. And you're allowed to ask them that as well. And if you adopt that mentality, and if you adopt that strategy and that dialogue every time you're engaging with somebody throughout this process on topics that you know are likely to lead to potential unreasonable expectations in the future, is that you're always clarifying, can you please tell me what your interpretation is of this and what you believe to be true here? And then you're speaking that truth back to them again as verification. That's the first thing that you can do. That eliminates 99% of all problems that potentially arise in the future through that one strategy. Or let's say 98%, because we've got another strategy to get that additional 1%. Never 100%, but certainly 99%. The second strategy that you can implement as well is ensure that all of your communication is recorded. And what I mean by this is not having a device in which it records all of your phone calls or an app that records your phone calls, but have a platform in which you can communicate where all of the feedback that you've given is in one location and can be either reread or listened to again. What mostly happens in interactions when information is conveyed and is misunderstood is it's actually through phone calls. Now you'd think it would be the written word because written word can be interpreted in a lot of different ways, but it's actually calls because we believe that when we're talking to somebody that information is being received in a particular way, and if the owner needs to recall that information that was shared in that call 2, 3, 4 days later, oftentimes they can't recall the entirety of it, and there's only a percentage of what was spoken about they can remember. And so the biggest recommendation that I can give, besides clarifying and verifying all information and all feedback and all insights when you're meeting with somebody in those initial interactions when it comes to the appraisal and listing presentation, is, and throughout the rest of the marketing as well, always clarify and verify, is make sure that you have a platform that you set up. It could be WhatsApp, it could be WeChat, it could be Telegram, it doesn't matter, but a platform that allows you to send voice messages. This has been one of the biggest, I'll call it a hack. I don't often talk about hacks. I don't really like the word hack or tips or tricks. But if you were to summarize it as a hack, making sure that you have a group set up between all owners, all stakeholders in the transaction, and having that set up the moment that the property is live, or even prior to that, the moment that the authority is signed. Set that up so that any time in which you need to convey information, which you would typically convey in a phone call, convey that through a voice message. And the benefit here is that you're clarifying what it is that you're wanting to speak to. You can, through that voice message, ask them to clarify, and you can then verify the information back to them as well. But what you can do is, if in the future you do need to refer to a particular communication that typically would have been a phone call, and then it becomes a he said, she said, is that you can actually direct them, respectfully, direct them back to communication that you've provided, which supports what it is that you're saying. And again, if they've responded like they should do when you're trying to clarify and verify, then you've also got the communication from them backing up what they've previously agreed to as well. So any time in which you need to call a client or a customer, follow it up with a voice message, or prior to calling them, send them the voice message as well. So you've always got it there so that you can refer back to it. If an owner wants to listen to it again because it's an update or feedback from a particular client around price, you're able to refer back to it, but they can also refer back to it as well. So if they can't remember what was discussed in the 5-6 minute conversation they've had on the phone with you, they're able to go back to that voice message and get those insights and get that information so they can make an informed decision again. So when it comes to unreasonable expectations, when it comes to clients that are unreasonable, again, in my experience, and having had over 800 consultations with agents in just the last 2 years, and with my over decade experience in the industry, most people are inherently good. Most people are not difficult to deal with as a whole, as a person. They don't want to be. It's that they've got a belief, they've got a understanding in their mind, which is being challenged, which then we see as being unreasonable. And what I would ask that you do moving forward is that you adopt these strategies in your business, and you adopt this lens that everybody's a good person. They're just possibly misunderstood, or they've got the wrong expectation. And what we need to do is we need to ensure that in every interaction that we have with a prospective client, right from the beginning all the way through to the end, is that we need to know that people often receive information in a way that we wouldn't expect them to or intend them to receive it. And we always have to clarify and verify that information to ensure that it has been understood the way in which we wanted it to be, that it's been interpreted the way that we want it to be, and that we're always backing that up as well with a way in which we can review and refer back to those communications in the future. And that will resolve 99% of the problems that you would potentially experience with difficult clients. Besides those maybe 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 20 that genuinely just are difficult people. And then again, if they're unreasonable at the time of the listing presentation, I would question as to why you would want to be working with them, particularly if you're clarifying and verifying, and you know that based on the questions that you're asking, the qualifying question that you're asking, that they are not reasonable at the time of the listing. I would be looking at potentially directing my attention, time, and energy and effort somewhere else where I'm going to get a better result and also be valued and appreciated as well. So that can be mitigated as well in terms of people that are genuinely difficult by asking questions, logical questions, and clarifying and verifying. So go about your business, go and kill it. If you can take away 1 or 2 or 3 of these things that we've spoken to in this video, it's going to help you immensely, not only just on your real estate transactions, but in all of your transactions that you have in life, but also all the interactions that you have as well with anybody in life. So have an amazing time. I'll see you in the next one.